I want to show you something that I demonstrated to a patient today who is postpartum, because it really helps you understand what we're trying to restore and what we're trying to reverse from pregnancy changes so that you can have a much stronger core. So we have 4 abdominal layers. We have our transverse abdominals, which are horizontal, running from the ribs down to our pelvis and wrapping into the back, attaching to our back fascia. We have our rectus abs, which attach from the ribs down to our pelvis and also fascial connections into the pelvic floor. And then we have our external obliques, which are on either side like this, diagonally, and then our internal obliques, which are diagonally like this. So in pregnancy, all of these abdominal muscles stretch or lengthen. The transverse abs lengthen out in that horizontal plane, our rectus lengthen out in that vertical plane, and then you might get that separation, especially later on in pregnancy. Does not mean it's a diastasis, but it's just a separation because of that lengthening, and so it's a natural separation of that tissue. And then our obliques, they get pulled off to the side, and even though they may be lengthening out, a lot of times they compensate for the lengthening of our transverse and our rectus and actually can become more tight. So part of this lengthening out is baby growing, and as baby grows, the weight of baby pulls our spine forward. Okay, and so when it pulls our spine forward, it increases that arch in our back. A lot of times it dumps our pelvis forward, and that actually creates more of a lengthening in the abdominal muscles, especially in our rectus abs. So as you can see here, if I go into that pregnancy posture, it lengthens out those vertical abs, okay? And so what can happen is our transverse is going to try to work harder, maybe, and then our obliques are going to work really hard to try to pull those ribs back down. What I see all the time in postpartum is fear around flexing your spine, and this is from misinformation about diastasis recti and flexion. No crunches, no planks. Don't do things that round your spine because it may cause it to get worse. However, you just spent many months in spine extension, which keeps your abs lengthened, and if we stay here through postpartum for fear of flexing or inability to find that flexion, it can actually cause more problems in the long run. So what I have the vast majority of my postpartum patients doing is finding flexion through their spine to help stretch out these tight back muscles and reintroduce connection into the front wall of the abdominals. This also helps with the psoas, it helps with breathing, which is all great for reconnecting to your core. And 2 of my all-time favorite, very passive ways to do this is a deep squat, which you can sit onto something and then literally going into the fetal position in this deep squat and rounding your spine. Now, I am not tucking my butt under. My sit bones are anchored, but I am rounding through my spine. I'm trying to create this C curve. So this is one of my favorite. My other very passive way to do this is child's pose over something. So again, you are trying to really round your low back, breathing into that back. One of my favorite non-passive ways to do this is to get into cat position and then breathe in this position. So if you go into a cat pose, rounding up and using very minimal muscles to get into this position. So I'm going to round, but I'm not going to overly tuck my butt. So I'm rounding my low back to mid back. And then again, you're breathing in this position, really focusing on opening up your back. But then when you're exhaling, you're focusing on energizing that pelvic floor and those abdominals. So this is a less passive way to start to reconnect into that flexion.